this video, we're gonna make a nice quality leather belt that's gonna last for years using just a small handful of tools. Now what's important is we start with good quality leather. So this is a Herman oak belt blank. This is 11 to 13 ounce, which is heavy enough that it doesn't need a liner. So there we go, no sewing machine. But the next thing that we need to do is figure out what length we wanna make that belt and how long we need to cut our blank so it turns out to be the right length. This particular belt, we're gonna make this a 34-inch belt. That means from the fold where the buckle attaches down to the center hole is gonna be 34 inches. So we're gonna start laying this out using a couple of these belt templates here. I'm using the large taper set because we're gonna be building a tapered belt here. We're gonna be going from 1.5 inches down to 1.25 inches. So I'm gonna come out here towards the end of this blank, holding this in place. Now this is with my snap in, so it has these 4 little holes as well as this oblong hole. That's for the tongue of a buckle. Just using my little scratch awl here, I'm gonna go and trace this out, holding things down in place. And then I'm gonna mark where these holes are, as well as that center oblong. All right, now is when our measurement comes into place. So we need to measure from where the fold where the buckle attaches, which is gonna be this center of this oblong hole here. So I'm just gonna make a little dot right in the middle of that so we can see where we're going from. I wanna measure from that, and I wanna come down here to what we said we're gonna be making this belt a 34-inch belt. So I wanna come down to 34 inches. And I'm gonna make a mark right in the center of that belt at 34 inches. Now, that's gonna be to our center hole. So I'm gonna find my center hole in here, because this template uses a 5-hole pattern. That center hole, we're gonna mark right at that 34. Now I can hold this template in place, get my taper marked, mark all the way down to the tip. And then we'll also mark those holes. Now coming with a box knife, I can go cut around both of those ends. Now that it's cut to length and we have our tapers cut in there, let's take some of this scrap, this excess that was off the end of that belt blank, and cut a little piece out that we're gonna wind up making a keeper out of. So let's give us plenty of room here. Let's take 5 inches off the end of this. And then let's come in and do a 1/2 inch wide. So if you have it on the grid like this, it makes it real easy. If not, just measure in, make your marks, and cut a straight line. But we want to go a 1/2 inch wide on this keeper. All right, this belt blank down here where the buckle is going to need to bend to come around that buckle, as well as our keeper is going to need to bend to make a circle out of that. But you notice that's both really thick because we're not lining this belt. So we need to thin down both this keeper and down here on the buckle end of this belt. And that's where this Skife comes into play. Super handy tool. But I'm looking at where these holes are here for our rivets. That's all where that taper is. I'm going to turn that to the back side. And with this Skife, I want to thin this area down a little bit. If you don't have a Skife, you don't want to get this, but maybe you have a sander, you can sand this leather down too. So just use what tools you have. It doesn't take a lot of them to make a really nice belt. So look at that. That's a lot thinner. That's going to fold around really nice. Now with our keeper, I want to do the same thing. We'll get this thinned down. And you'll notice we kind of tapered that off. So we're a little thicker in the middle, but we taper out towards the ends here because as this folds around, it's gonna have a little bit of an overlap to it. So we can check that and make sure we're good on our length right now. We can look at where this keeper's gonna go. We're gonna go around that. So let's start it right here at the edge so we know. If that's right there at the edge, what we need to be able to account for is another layer of that belt and this to fold back around. So we're a little bit long there. We can actually take some off of that, and I'm just kind of eyeballing this as well. So I turn that over here. If we look to have maybe 1 inch of overlap, we can take maybe a 1/4 inch off of this. So I'm gonna take 1/4 of an inch off of that keeper. So now we're looking at 4 3/4 is where that's at right now. That's gonna make a really nice little keeper. This next tool is an edge beveler, because instead of these squared off edges here, we want a nice, round, slick feeling belt. Same thing on the keeper. So I'm gonna use this edge beveler. We're gonna get a little bit off the top side, as well as turn that over and get the bottom side. Now again, maybe you don't have one of these tools, don't want to invest in it. Use a sander. Get creative, use a router. There's different things you can do without having to buy more stuff. But this tool makes it really nice to get a nice rounded edge. So we're gonna go around on the top and the bottom all the way around this belt. Now we have those edges beveled off, I want to take it to the next level because we could in there, but I want to make them just a little bit more slick. So here's one product that can really help. It's called gum Tragacanth, and I'm just going to use a little dauber here and get some of that on the end of this. Now what we're going to do is run right down this belt, right on the edge. We're going to do it small sections at a time, but I want to get that good layer of gum Tragacanth on there. Or for short, you can call it gum trag. Tragacanth, big long word, gets to be a mouthful. So gum trag, we're gonna put that on the edge. Now, with a scrap piece of canvas, we're gonna squeeze that in there. So I'm kind of pinching my fingers together and pushing against that. We're just gonna slide that up and down. And with that friction, that's gonna heat that up and help that gum trag sink in there. And we're gonna get a nice, slick, glass feeling edge. And what I like doing is pulling this to the end of the table. That way I can just hang it out off the edge there and run that canvas along that. You can see as we do that, that gets that nice, dark, burnished edge on there and just feels like glass. So we're gonna go all the way around this belt doing that, as well as on the keeper, and make that nice and slick on the edges too. Let's look at punching some holes. So with this keeper, we talked about there being 1 inch overlap here. So I'm gonna come look at my 1 inch in from there. We're not gonna get too technical. I'm gonna punch one out here towards the end, and then I'm gonna come in a little bit, probably about a 1/4 inch in, and we'll punch another one, just to make sure we have both those holes within that 1 inch. Now we need to see where those are gonna punch on the other side. So I need to mark in on the one we're gonna overlap 1 inch, because that's where we're gonna be overlapping to, right? So if that's marked at 1 inch, I can take this one with the holes, overlap that there to my 1 inch mark. Now with my scratch awl or with a pen or whatever you have handy, reach through and mark those 2 holes. Now we can punch those in the bottom side. While we have this little 1/8 inch punch out, we can come back here where these 4 holes are marked. This is for our rivets, so we can punch those as well. Now this belt here, we're gonna rivet on to where this buckle's gonna stay on here, but if I was using snaps or Chicago screws, those holes would be marked the same place. The next hole we're gonna punch is this oblong hole here. Now I have a 1 inch bag punch or a slotted punch here, and that's what I'm gonna use in there. If you don't have one of these, no problem. Take another larger punch, punch 2 holes out there on the end, and then cut your straight lines in between. You don't have to have a fancy punch to do this. Now we're going to turn this belt to the other end. Let's take this 3/16 punch. We're going to punch all our holes that we marked. So our 5-hole pattern here for buckling our belt. Before we set any rivets, I'm going to take our pure Neatsfoot oil with a scrap of sheepskin here or a rag or anything you have, and we're going to coat down really well. Not only the belt, but our keeper too. So I'm going to start with that keeper. We'll get a good solid coat on there. And now on our belt, let's get this oiled all the way down here. This oil is going to do a few things. One, as you can see, it helps darken that leather. Now it's going to soak in there and lighten up quite a bit, but it will add a little bit of richness to the color of that leather. What it's really doing is moisturizing the leather, and that's going to help add to our durability and longevity of this belt. So I really advise using Neatsfoot oil or some conditioner on this belt to help that soften up. Now the other thing is right here in this fold, where I want this to fold, I don't want to accidentally crack the finish of this leather. So I'm going to use that oil right along there as I'm bending that. And that's going to help wet that leather down so it doesn't crack when I put a nice hard bend in that. If you're not using oil, you can use just water right here too. But make sure you do this instead of just crank that leather over and fold it, because it'll split the finished side of that leather there. Time now to set some rivets. So let's start by getting this keeper put together. Remember we talked about overlapping that. We have our holes punched already. So with these small little 1/4 inch double cap rivets, I'm gonna go from the back side. We're gonna get those pushed through each of the 2 holes. Once those posts are in there, I can wrap this around, get our second piece on there. And now these caps, they go right on your post, and you can almost hear them click on there. Still have some oil on my fingers so it slips there. They get a nice little click, but that's not secure yet. That's just barely clicked in there. We need to actually hammer these down a little bit. And you can use a fancy setter, or you can just use a flat side of your hammer. Now I'm going to be laying this down right straight on this smooth marble. Two things. One, it's going to help from not marring up the top side of that. And two, it's a nice hard surface to help set these rivets in here. All right, now we have a nice keeper. It's riveted together. That's not coming apart. Now it's time to start putting this together on your belt. Let's take our buckle. This is an 1¼ inch buckle because we've tapered this down. We're gonna stick that through there, get our buckle attached on that. Don't forget about your keeper. And if we riveted this down, this keeper won't fit on our other end because it's a tapered belt. Always remember to get that on there first. That way we can get that buckle to fit in there. Now, with our longer rivets, we can come from the back side of our belt there. Get our first rivet set. Now we can make sure that keeper is slid between our 2 layers of leather so it doesn't go anywhere. Bring our last rivet through the back. Get our cap on here and do the final set on that. We can check those, bring our belt around here, make sure it fits in there nicely. There you have it. Simple, high quality belt without a sewing machine and very limited tools. Let me know what questions you have in the comments and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on our next video.